Please note that the entire conference, except for the public portion, will occur under the Chatham House rule, which means you can use the information received, but you cannot identify the affiliation of the speakers or of any participant connected to their remarks. You are asked not to record the conference in order to facilitate a free-flowing and informal debate. The open remarks obviously are attributable and on the record. Also, a few housekeeping rules. Please use your laptop and wear headphones rather than your computer speakers in order to minimize disruptive feedback. Please keep your microphones muted unless you are given the floor. If any of our attendees have a question, please use the Q&A tool. We will receive the questions in writing and give them to the speakers as appropriate. Finally, an important notice for participants. The Nato TV picks up the stream live. I will be giving the opening remarks for the public, and then I will hand over to the foreign minister. We are just waiting now for the stream to go live on Nato television.
I can't see myself. Yep, here I am.
Sorry to everyone waiting. We're just waiting to go live on Nato TV. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are live. Welcome to NATO's 16th annual Weapons of Mass Destruction Conference, co-hosted by the government of Romania and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. We originally planned on having an in-person conference in Bucharest, actually back in March, to coincide with the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons Review Conference. Sadly, the pandemic forced us to reschedule the meeting. We moved it after the UN General Assembly, and also to move the conference to an online event. We decided, since it was going to be online, to compress the agenda. Normally we would do 2 days. We would cover a range of topics related to weapons of mass destruction, but we have compressed the schedule and focused solely on the NPT treaty itself. Today, just to prepare you, we'll meet in several segments. First, we have the public segment, which is streamed live on NATO television, as well as the YouTube and Facebook channels of the Romanian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We will then close the open session and go to closed session for participants only, the registered participants. So in an open session, we will have the Foreign Minister, His Excellency, Mr. Bogdan Orescu, give a welcoming address, followed by the NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg. The private session will include two panels, one focused on the P5, the other focused on the broader international efforts to make the NPT a success. We will close the conference with the Romanian State Secretary, Dan Nicolaescu, and then the NATO Secretary General, Mircea Joana. With that, let me just give you once again the basic housekeeping rules. Please use your laptop. If you are a speaker, please use headphones rather than your computer speakers, or we'll hear feedback. Keep your microphones muted until we give you the floor, and please use the Q&A tool. With that, let me turn to the Foreign Minister of Romania, His Excellency, Mr. Bogdan Orescu. My deep thanks for co-hosting this year and to your dedication to the transatlantic relationship, your long experience in diplomacy, and your distinguished career as an academician. I welcome your remarks. Sir, please, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. Secretary General Stoltenberg, dear Jens, Excellencies, distinguished participants. I welcome you to the 16th Annual NATO Conference on Weapons of Mass Destruction, Arms Control, Disarmament, and Non-Proliferation, co-hosted by NATO and the Romanian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. For Romania, hosting this landmark event represents a premiere, and I'm honored to be part of it. As 2020 unfolded, it turned out that the conference will be 3 times a premiere. For the first time hosted by Romania, for the first time in a virtual format, and for the first time with the Secretary General in Brussels and the Deputy Secretary General in Bucharest. Our involvement in this event reflects our strong commitment and engagement within NATO, one of Romania's foreign policy cornerstones. It also reflects our pledge to the current international arms control, disarmament, and non-proliferation architecture. NATO's role in nuclear disarmament, alongside its fundamental contribution to international and regional peace and security, are of utmost importance in the framework of our cooperation. I would like to particularly praise the excellent cooperation we had with NATO's International Secretariat in rescheduling and rearranging this conference. I would also like to welcome the presence here with us today of NATO's Deputy Secretary General, His Excellency Mr. Mircea Joana, of Ambassador Gustavo Eslaubinen, President-designate of the Review Conference of the Treaty on Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, as well as of the United Nations Under-Secretary General and High Representative for Disarmament Affairs, His Excellency Mrs. Izumi Nakamitsu, and the EU Special Envoy for Non-Proliferation and Disarmament, Her Excellency Mrs. Marjolijn von Dellen, alongside 2 outstanding panels of speakers. Mr. Secretary General, distinguished participants, international non-proliferation, arms control, and disarmament architecture is under constant pressure for a number of years. New global challenges are emerging. Current developments should be wake-up calls for all of us who are attached to multilateralism, international law, and the rules-based international order. Romania is a firm believer and a constant promoter of an effective multilateral approach and international cooperation based on the respect for international law. Existing threats are persistent and new ones emerge. We need to address all of them with determination, unity, and coherence, both within NATO and in other international frameworks we are part of. Together with its allies and partners, Romania remains deeply committed to upholding and fully implementing in their letter and spirit the current arms control, disarmament, and non-proliferation agreements. I would like to reaffirm the strong support for the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, the NPT. The NPT stays as the cornerstone of the global nuclear non-proliferation and disarmament architecture. On the 5th of March this year, we celebrated the 50th anniversary of its entry into force. The NPT is a historic success and continues to represent our best tool for the global efforts to achieve a world without nuclear weapons in accordance with the principle of undiminished security for all. On its 50th anniversary, we must recommit to reinforcing the NPT. There is no alternative to this treaty. Romania remains committed to the goal of a world free of nuclear weapons, achieved in an effective, verifiable, and irreversible manner. Our view of attaining this goal is through a progressive approach, based on pragmatic and realistic measures that could provide real and lasting progress on disarmament. A few words on the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, also known as the Ban Treaty. Accomplishing tangible results on nuclear disarmament requires cooperation and a careful and lucid consideration of the international security environment. Banning nuclear weapons without engaging the nuclear weapon states is not effective and does not enhance international security and stability. A true viable road to nuclear disarmament should focus on improving the strategic context. For providing real and lasting progress on disarmament, all parties must work together towards a security environment more conducive to arms control and disarmament. Against this background, to us, the rationale expressed in the Brussels Summit Declaration and in the North Atlantic Council Statement of the 20th of September 2017 remains valid. At a time when we face growing threats, a unified approach to proliferation and security threats is required more than ever. The success of the NPT cannot be taken for granted. It requires sustained efforts. Romania stands ready to work together with its international partners towards a successful 10th Review Conference and reaffirms its full support to achieving a successful, comprehensive, and balanced outcome. We expect that the constructive approach and the consensual spirit will prevail and pave the way for a positive outcome of the Review Conference. A successful outcome requires a balanced approach to all the three pillars of the NPT by highlighting the central role of non-proliferation and its relationship to nuclear disarmament and peaceful uses of nuclear energy. In this respect, we recognize the practical value and contribution of complementary initiatives such as the creating the environment for nuclear disarmament for a successful outcome of the Review Conference. I take this opportunity to also underline as a concrete national contribution to the upcoming Review Conference and to the implementation of the NPT, Romania's efforts as co-presidency for a successful ICONS 2020, the high-level international conference on nuclear security, sustaining and strengthening efforts, that took place in Vienna between the 10th and the 14th of February 2020, and which I had the honor to co-chair together with Panama. The adoption by consensus of the ministerial declaration with that occasion, a concise, politically driven, and forward-looking document, offered the IAEA member states the opportunity to reaffirm the common goals of nuclear non-proliferation, nuclear disarmament, and peaceful uses of nuclear energy. This represents a clear proof of our commitment to multilateralism and to a consolidated international global regime on nuclear non-proliferation. Distinguished participants, good faith negotiations on strategic arms control are key to international security. They go beyond a mere bilateral understanding. The United States put forward a substantive proposal as a basis for extending the New START, and I welcome the progress achieved so far. We would also consider appropriate an extension of the participation framework by the inclusion of China. Dear Mr. Secretary General, dear friends and colleagues, let me conclude by reaffirming my country's resolve to actively contribute to all efforts aimed at consolidating the international security architecture in order to achieve a safer and more secure world. I reiterate once more Romania's conviction that it is in our shared responsibility to ensure that the NPT will continue to stand the test of time. I look forward to a successful event and meaningful discussions. Thank you.
So much, Minister. I appreciate your remarks, which I think were just an excellent frame for our discussions today. We will now turn to the NATO Secretary General, Jens Stoltenberg. I want to highlight his particular leadership on arms control, disarmament, non-proliferation. His speech last year at the 15th NATO WMD conference was the first dedicated speech by a Secretary General on arms control in 3 decades, since Manfred Warner back in the early 1990s. He also shepherded through a wonderful council statement on the 5th of March on the anniversary of the treaty, celebrating the achievements of the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons. Mr. Secretary General, thank you so much for your dedication to this topic. Thank you for being here today. I turn it over to you for your remarks, sir.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Minister Orescu, Bogdan, and many thanks to Romania for organizing this NATO conference under very challenging circumstances. NATO has been at the forefront of nuclear disarmament for decades because our ultimate goal is a world free of nuclear weapons. Together, we have reduced the number of nuclear weapons in Europe by more than 90% over the past 30 years. But in an uncertain world, these weapons continue to play a vital role in preserving peace. Only 3 NATO allies possess nuclear weapons, but all NATO allies benefit from the security guarantees they provide. Our nuclear deterrent is our strongest deterrent. At the same time, there are legitimate concerns about nuclear weapons and their proliferation. Russia and China are investing heavily in sophisticated and diverse nuclear arsenals. North Korea continues its nuclear expansion, and in Iran, the centrifuges are spinning again. With this, the prospect for complete nuclear disarmament seems remote, but it's not less relevant. Today, we need to pursue nuclear arms control and disarmament as a matter of urgency. Yet, we need to do this in a balanced, reciprocal, and verifiable way. So today, I will set out 3 steps that are critical in our efforts towards nuclear disarmament. First, we must continue to invest in the tools that have worked, such as the Treaty on Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, the NPT. Earlier this year, we marked the 50th anniversary of the entry into force of the NPT, a treaty that all NATO allies strongly support, and that has successfully limited the global spread of nuclear weapons. In the past 5 decades, thanks directly to the NPT, tens of thousands of nuclear weapons have been eliminated. It has also provided a framework for countries like Belarus, Kazakhstan, South Africa, and Ukraine to abandon their nuclear programs. And it has established a robust safeguards and verification regime, allowing non-nuclear weapon states to take advantage of peaceful uses of nuclear energy. So it has achieved a lot. But we cannot take its enduring success for granted. It requires sustained commitment and effort. NATO allies are playing their part. In March this year, we call on all parties to the treaty to work together towards a successful NPT review conference next year. Because this conference is a major opportunity for the international community to strengthen the NPT. We must also seize this opportunity to not undermine the NPT or challenge its vital role. I know that there are those that look at the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, or the ban treaty, as an alternative solution to eliminate all nuclear weapons. At first glance, it seems attractive, but the reality is that it will not work. The ban treaty has no mechanism to ensure the balanced reduction of weapons and no mechanism for verification. Moreover, it has not been signed by any state that possesses nuclear weapons. Simply giving up our deterrent without any guarantees that others will do the same is a dangerous option. Because a world where Russia, China, North Korea, and others have nuclear weapons, but NATO does not, is not a safer world. On the contrary, it will leave us vulnerable to pressure and attack, and it will undermine the security of our alliance. The second step to nuclear disarmament is to preserve the bilateral arms control regime between the United States and Russia. We no longer live in a Cold War reality with two superpowers, but the US and Russia still have by far the largest nuclear arsenals in the world. So they hold a special responsibility to lead the way on nuclear arms control and disarmament. Historically, they have. When the first START treaty entered into force in 1994, the US and Russia were limited to 6,000 deployed nuclear warheads each. Now, under the new START, they are limited to no more than 1,550 deployed strategic warheads each. For the US, this is a reduction from over 30,000 during the Cold War. That is very significant. Now, the future of New START is at stake. It expires early next year. We should not find ourselves in a situation where we have no treaty limiting the number of strategic nuclear weapons. So therefore, I welcome the dialogue between the US and Russia to find a way forward. Just as they have in the past, they must continue to lead the way on arms control. But China must play its part too. And that brings me to the third step. We must develop a global nuclear arms control regime suited to a multipolar world. A regime that takes account of the rise of China. The time when China was at the margins of nuclear weapons development is over. As a global power with a large military and growing nuclear arsenal, it has a responsibility to engage openly and constructively in arms control negotiations. Regrettably, Beijing has so far refused to join any talks. And the lack of transparency on its nuclear capabilities and intentions is of concern. But ultimately, I'm convinced that China, like the rest of the world, would benefit from an arms control regime that limits the number of nuclear weapons, increases transparency, and enhances predictability. Those are the foundations for international stability. Ladies and gentlemen, NATO's nuclear deterrent has preserved peace in Europe for more than 70 years. At a time when threats to our security are more complex and unpredictable than ever before, we need a credible nuclear deterrent combined with effective arms control. To preserve peace and our freedom, but our ultimate goal remains unchanged: a world free of nuclear weapons. I have set out steps that would move us towards that goal. All of us participating in this conference today, allies, partners, and non-partner countries, have a responsibility to make the world a safer place. Thank you very much, and I wish you a very successful conference.
Thank you so much, Mr. Secretary General. I appreciate your remarks so much. And again, your involvement in this conference is one of my hallmarks of a success. We will take what you say to heart, and it will help our discussions on both panels as we move forward. So thank you very much for that. This ends the public section of the NATO WMD conference.